18 maids had to dance on the scorching iron table every single night, their bare feet burning until they turned a fiery blistered red. Yet they still had to force a smile through the agonizing pain, tears mixing with sweat as they hit the hot metal, sizzling with a sound that would make anyone's skin crawl. A thick, eerie steam rose up from the center of the stage. Most of the maids gave up and collapsed after only a few seconds, but in the end, I was the only one still dancing with grace and total poise. Down below, the young lord was staring at me, completely entranced, losing his mind. My little sister, who'd been thirsting after him for ages, absolutely refused to let him fall for my charms. That very night, she grabbed her pillow and snuck straight into the young lord's bedchamber. Too bad the young lord didn't even spare her a glance, coldly spitting out, "Sister, you aren't half as captivating as she is." That single sentence absolutely shattered my sister's fragile ego. In a fit of rage, she grabbed my arm and dragged me off the high city walls to our deaths. But surprise, not only did I survive, but I was also granted a regression to the very day Father brought us back to the estate. My sister and I stood there on opposite sides. Father told the madam to choose one of us to raise under her wing. In my past life, my sister snatched the spot with the virtuous madam, while I was dumped off to the singing and dancing concubine. This time around, I didn't expect my sister to move first and choose Consort Sue immediately. That's when it hit me. My sister had been granted a regression just like me. Father was visibly shook and caught off guard. He clearly favored my sister and knew she had the most main character potential. Seeing her pass up the chance to be the legitimate daughter raised by the madame, and instead intentionally running into Consort Sue's quarters, he asked in a panic, "Why would you choose such a life of hardship? Why are you doing this to yourself?" "Father, I've thought it through. Just let the madam adopt my sister instead." With that, she bowed and rushed off toward Consort Sue's quarters as fast as her legs could carry her. As she brushed past me, she shot me a smug, triumphant smirk. "Have fun being the legitimate daughter who suffers through all the misery in this life," her eyes seemed to say. How could I not see right through Jiang Ling's little scheme? In our past life, she was desperate to be the legitimate daughter, fighting to get into the madam's good graces, only to realize too late how delusional she really was. Even though the madam was the main wife, she had zero of Father's affection. Her living quarters were as cold as an icebox, and she had no interest in playing the concubine game or winning over Father's cold heart. Every single day, she just wastes away in the Buddhist shrine. Jiang Ling was forced to follow suit, kept under the strictest supervision imaginable. Before the sun even hits, the madam has her up and moving. After getting ready, she's dragged off to the city's finishing school for high-born ladies to listen to lectures. Even when she gets home, there's no downtime. The madam forces her to grind over abacus lessons and ledgers until late at night. Jiang Ling is miserable, and the contrast is giving major shade. While she's dizzy from crunching numbers, I'm out with concubine Sue, enjoying a private theater show. When her wrists are literally giving out from practicing calligraphy, concubine Sue takes me out to frolic in the fields and fly kites. Not to mention, as we got a bit older, at every high society social gathering in the capital, concubine Sue would dress me up until I looked absolutely iconic, and I was already showing off my vocal and instrument skills. Every noble heir in the city was low-key obsessed with me. Everyone hailed me as the capital's top beauty, while Jiang Ling was basically invisible. She had zero talent to show for herself. All those household management skills the madam shoved down her throat were completely useless in a social setting. Thank God for her status as the legitimate daughter. At least it gave her a slight edge when it came to marriage prospects. Eventually, she caught feelings for the young heir of the Marquise of Yongping and went on a hunger strike, kneeling before the madam, begging her to go to the Marquis's estate and lock down the marriage. Since she was still so young, the madam told her to drop it and wait. But Jiang Ling was acting totally delulu, so the madam punished her by forcing her to transcribe scriptures 30 times in the shrine. While Jiang Ling was stuck in that shrine, I was at a garden party performing the Green Demon dance that concubine Sue taught me. Since concubine Sue started as a professional dancer, this dance was her absolute signature move. She taught me to perform it amidst the flowers, every look and every smile dripping with charisma, leaving all the noble heirs shook. Word on the street is that every man in the capital was down bad for me that day. Back then, my sister didn't hesitate to pick the madam's side, and she'd mock me, saying that in the Zhang household, being the legitimate daughter is the only thing that matters, telling me to keep following that old woman and suffer for it. Ha! Because the madam's quarters were definitely a total vibe. If your vibe is hell on earth, stepping into the madam's room felt like walking into an icebox, with zero decor, just wooden furniture, a Buddha statue, and an incense burner. The madam didn't even open her eyes, just spoke through the haze of sandalwood smoke. "You look disappointed, don't you?" In my past life, given my sister's personality, she definitely looked miserable the second she stepped into this room. Who would have thought that Tong Tang, the madam of the house, would be living with fewer belongings than a mere concubine after falling out of favor? I mean, Su Yang's room is basically a gold-plated flex, straight up gaudy and over the top. I just calmly added a piece of agarwood to the incense burner and told her, I feel that if the room is kept pure and simple, your heart will be clearer. No amount of gold and jade can compete with the sunlight streaming through the window. Just then, the sunlight was stretching quietly across the floor. The first madam arched a brow, a flicker of surprise flashing in her eyes as she looked at me. Clearly, she didn't expect me to say something like that. Such an interesting little girl, right? Fine, since you've committed to following me, I will be the one to mold you from now on. I don't play around with training, so you might not like what I'm about to put you through. Whatever you teach me, madam, I will learn. Stacks of ledgers piled up like mountains, with an abacus sitting right on the table. The first madam held a ruler, her expression ice cold. Focus. Don't let your mind wander. If you mess up 3 times, I'm swatting your palms. Learning how to manage accounts is honestly such a drag. It's nowhere near as vibey as writing poetry or gazing at the moon. These numbers are giving me a massive headache. Just figuring out the cash flow is a nightmare, let alone analyzing the business logic behind it. I'd occasionally get so sleepy, my eyes would drift shut, and that's when the ruler would tap against my palm. It didn't even hurt, but it was enough to snap me back to reality instantly. The first madam pulled back the ruler and asked, tough, isn't it? I shook my head at first, thought about it for a second, then nodded. Yeah, it's actually a grind. But I know that if I don't learn these skills now, when I eventually marry into another house as a madam, everyone will try to gaslight and scam me just because I'm clueless. And that would be way more exhausting than any of this. A person has to suffer one way or another, so I'd rather deal with the struggle of learning than the tragedy of being a fool. The first madam raised an eyebrow. She's still a stunning woman, with those same elegant features still lingering between her brows, even if she just wears plain robes and prays to Buddha now, carrying that vibe of quiet, settled solitude. Honestly, I really like her. She's always been pretty cold toward me. But whenever the seasons shift and it gets chilly at night, she'd sneak into my room at midnight to tuck in my blanket before silently slipping away. But the patriarch doesn't vibe with her. That afternoon, Father finally graced us with his presence. He only visits the madam once a month to keep up appearances for his legal wife. The servants were bustling around, totally hyped, making the whole courtyard feel unusually lively. But Father hadn't even been there for half an hour before someone started singing outside. Who the hell is that? Xiao Si stepped up, saying it was Sunyang teaching Miss Ling how to sing. Before long, Sunyang swept in with a waft of cloying perfume. She was dressed like a tacky disaster, dragging an equally gaudy Zhang Ling behind her. Zhang Long, did you hear Linger singing? Isn't it even better than when I used to sing for you? I remember when we first met at Hujin Pavilion, I sang this exact song for you. I didn't expect you to still remember my singing voice, Jiang Long. I'm not what I used to be, sadly. At least I can pass it on to my daughter. Linger, why don't you invite your father back to the room for an encore? Father, Concubine and I have missed you so much. We've got tea and fruit set up in the courtyard. Will you stay and listen to me sing? The two of them flanked him on both sides, cooing and acting like total pick-me girls. In the blink of an eye, Father was dragged off by the dynamic duo. The madam's room was left in dead, awkward silence. The little maids couldn't hide their disappointment. Father only visits once a month and even that got hijacked. Madam, should we still serve dinner? The young lady specifically ordered the kitchen to prepare your favorite dishes since Father was coming. Before the madam could even respond, I stood up abruptly. Serve it? Why wouldn't we? If Father won't eat, we'll eat it ourselves. Just because the man decided to ghost us? Does that mean us women are just supposed to starve? Lay it all out. We've got the 8 Immortals pearl dish, right? That's my absolute favorite. I'll crush the whole pot by myself. The maids were honestly living for my energy, and they immediately scrambled to get the table set. The mood in the room suddenly got chaotic and buzzing. The madam threw a glance at me, let out a soft laugh after a beat and said, "Girl, well done. You've certainly got some spine." From that day on, the madam started telling the kitchen to prepare the 8 Immortals pearl dish specifically for me. She'd have them serve it, but honestly, I never saw Father's face in my quarters again. He spent every night at Concubine Su's place, and every single delicacy that entered the manor was prioritized for Concubine Su and Jiangling. During the day, Jiangling would see me and smirk so hard her earrings shook. See that? What's the point of being the legitimate daughter? Whose heart does Father actually care about? That's the only person who actually gets to live a life of gold and glory. She was waiting for me to break down and sob in misery, But I kept my face stone cold and replied, completely unbothered, "Little sister, have you ever considered that tunes are only meant for entertainers and clowns to perform? If concubine Sue can make you sing and dance to entertain father now, she'll definitely find even trashier ways to humiliate you later." Zhongling's face went through a total shift, but she just laughed it off a second later. "You're just pressed and jealous, that's all. Just you wait, you've got so much suffering coming your way." She turned around and stomped off, but I wasn't even capping. In my past life, concubine Sue treated me exactly like this, forcing me to sing and dance to compete for father's favor. Back then, it was just the madam and concubine Sue in the manor, and the madam was definitely not the favorite. Concubine Sue relied on those little tricks to keep father on a leash. But later on, father started bringing in younger, fresher faces. Suddenly, her old tactics weren't hitting the same anymore. So, concubine Sue started resorting to low-life moves, drugging my food to make me vomit, and greasing the floors where I practiced dancing so I'd get hurt. Once I was sick or injured, she'd run to father, crying crocodile tears, using my pain to keep his attention locked on her. Those years were basically a living nightmare for me. Watching concubine Sue, I realized one thing. If you live your whole life relying on a man's fickle affection, you're doomed to spend your life fighting others for a scrap of his attention. And in that game, you're always going to lose eventually. But the madam? She didn't fight for his heart, yet she never truly lost her status. In her room, which felt as cold as an ice cave, estate managers and shop owners were constantly coming and going. Every single one of them treated her with pure respect. Nobody dared to scam her out of a single cent. The maids, servants, and guards in her corner were perfectly disciplined and loyal to a fault. Since I've regressed, that's exactly the kind of girl boss matriarch I'm trying to be. Just like that, Zhongling spent her days learning to dance with concubine Sue, while I spent mine learning to hold management from the madam. Besides taking over the manor's finances, I hit the madam with a new request. I wanted to learn swordplay. The madam was absolutely shook. There was literally an antique sword hanging in the room. Piecing together the gossip from the servants, I finally decoded her backstory. She used to be a total girl boss from a legendary military family. Back when she was 15, she literally fought you through enemy lines with a sword to deliver secret dispatches to her fathers and brother. But then her father died in battle, and after her brother climbed the ranks, they basically married her off to my dad, a mid-tier bureaucrat. That tea is long cold, and her precious sword has just been collecting dust in the corner ever since. In my past life, Zhongling was terrified of that blade, but looking at it now, I was honestly down bad for the thrill of it. "Madam, please teach me the way of the sword." I locked eyes with her, but her face was giving zero expression, which had me low-key spiraling. I couldn't tell if that sword represented her former glory or just straight-up trauma. After a long silence, she turned away cold, leaving me with nothing but her back. Just as I was about to give up and accept the L, she tossed a command over her shoulder. "Go to the courtyard and show me your stance." From that day on, I started training under the madam. Seasons flew by, and in the blink of an eye, I'd had a major glow-up into a stunning young lady. That day I was practicing by the lake, my blade flashing as it sliced through the peach blossoms. In a heartbeat, the petals fell in a perfect line, clean cuts, zero crumbs. I knew then and there, I'd finally mastered it. Suddenly, I heard someone clapping behind me. I whipped around, shook, to find a group of people hiding behind the rockery the whole time. It was a bunch of noble socialites out for a spring outing, and of course, my lovely sister Jiangling was in the mix. Not gonna lie, Jiangling is basically the it girl of the current social circle. She was serving look in a peach pink gown today, with every rich boy simping and kissing up to her. This was the peak status she never reached in our past life. But just as she was main charactering and soaking in the attention, the guys caught a glimpse of me mid-sword dance by the lake. The lead nobleman was the first to start hyping me up, saying legend has it Gongsun's sword dance once shook the world. But seeing this lady today, she's basically a reincarnated legend. As soon as he dropped that, the other guys started tripping over themselves to agree, and Zhongling glared at me, her eyes so dark and cold they could honestly freeze over. I had just finished my sword training, and was rushing to get a wash. Suddenly, I heard a massive commotion outside my door. "Lady Ling's hairpin is missing. Search everywhere and don't miss a spot." I stepped out, still dripping wet from my bath, only to be greeted by Zhongling and her pack of servants. "I don't know what kind of tantrums you're throwing now," I said. "I know eldest sister wouldn't steal, but she's still a suspect, so we have no choice but to search the room." The servants didn't hesitate and stormed my room like they owned the place. A moment later, one of them ran out with the hairpin in hand. "Second miss, we found it. It was hiding in the eldest miss's vanity table." Right on cue, my father walked in after hosting guests, hearing the chaos. "What is the meaning of this?" "Let me explain." The second he stepped through the door, Zhongling started fake sobbing. Sister, I know you're jealous that father spoils me and mother, but how could you stoop so low as to steal my hairpin? It's a family heirloom from my mother. She was so distraught she fainted on the spot and still hasn't woken up. Father, please, you have to get justice for her. In the main hall, a few servants were literally holding me down. My father sat on his high horse in the main seat, with Suniang acting all pathetic and Zhongling putting on a performance. Watching them cry in perfect harmony was so ridiculous that I actually started laughing out loud. My father flew into a rage. What are you laughing at? You get caught stealing and you still have the nerve to laugh? The Jiang family having a daughter like you is a disgrace. I should just beat you to death right now. I looked up, staring coldly at the man who shared my blood. And honestly, I didn't doubt for a second that he'd actually do it. The Jiangs might not kill their legitimate daughters, but I wasn't even born to the madam. My mom was just a servant. Not that the madam ever gave me anything but the cold shoulder anyway. To the outside world, it looked like she didn't have a shred of affection for me. Suniang clutched her chest, gasping for air while crying. Zhonglang, you know this hairpin is a relic from my mother, a treasure from the previous dynasty. It's priceless. Actually, regardless of how precious it is, if Miss Wei wanted it, I would have handed it over with both hands. But why did you have to steal it? If word gets out, and the Jiang family's reputation is ruined, what will happen to Linger's marriage prospects? Suniang finished her monologue and started fainting all over again. Zhongling rushed to help her up, patting her chest, while my father stared at me for a long time, then cited the law. The penalty for theft is 30 strokes of the cane. Just as I was hanging by a thread, a cold voice suddenly cut through the room from the doorway. Let me see who dares. My stepmother walked in. She usually sleeps early, so I never expected her to show up at this hour. She walked straight to my side and shot my father a look colder than ice. Even the local magistrate requires evidence, so since when does this house rule? By listening to one side and jumping straight to torture. My father's face turned ghostly pale. Su Diniang started wailing immediately. The truth is already clear. The evidence was found in the young Mrs. room. Surely, madam, you aren't trying to cover for her just because you raised her? Su Diniang had never been afraid of my stepmother. Because my father had pampered her for years. She already acted like she was the queen of the estate. As for my stepmother, she thought of her as a pathetic wife who lacked my father's love. Someone who kept to herself and stayed in her corner, so even when confronting the lady of the house, she didn't feel a shred of fear. But the woman who usually wore plain clothes and barely spoke suddenly turned her gaze towards Su Diniang. In that split second, she radiated an aura so intense it felt like a total main character moment. Nobody dared to meet her eyes. Kneel down, you low-class snake. Bring your daughter and get on your knees for me right now. Su Diniang was stunned and shot a desperate look at my father for help. My lord. But my father didn't say a word, just stared, trembling at the space behind my stepmother. Standing there were a dozen tall, imposing men. They didn't enter the room, just stood silently at the door, each one built like an iron fortress. These were the personal guards my stepmother brought with her from the general's estate when she married into this family. I'd always just thought of them as normal staff, calling them Uncle Lu and Uncle Li. They'd always grin back at me, and even buy me sesame candy to snack on. But now, decked out in armor and blades, they were deathly silent and terrifying. Every single one of them was a veteran who had fought on the front lines with the old general. My father's hands started to shake. The lady of the house spoke again. Since I've given the order, how dare you defy me? You clearly lack discipline. Kneel and admit your fault. Su Diniang was shaking like a leaf. She finally grabbed Zhongling and forced her to kneel, though she clearly wasn't happy about it. Still, she wasn't giving up, holding the hairpin up to my stepmother's face. Madam, this evidence was truly found in Vai's room. This is an heirloom from my mother's side, a relic from the former dynasty's palace, something you can't even find on the market anymore. The first madam took the hairpin, gave it a look, and immediately slammed it onto the floor. What kind of bargain bin trash is this? The entire room went dead silent. Everyone shook to their core. No one had ever dared to treat Su Concubine's gifts like that. Even the woman herself was stunned, staring at the hairpin on the ground, forgetting even to cry. The first madam shot a cold look at father. Do you really think the daughter of Wenxing is desperate enough to steal this piece of junk? Seeing father stutter and go speechless, the first madam turned to her maid. Nanny Wu, go fetch my jewelry box. The first madam was never one for dressing up. She usually kept it simple in plain linen, pinning her hair with a single jade hairpin, so even I had no clue she kept a massive jewelry collection hidden away. Nanny Wu quickly returned with 2 servants, hauling a large sandalwood chest. The moment it opened, the room was blinded by the sparkle of literal treasures. Father's new favorite, concubine Gu, a former palace maid who thought she'd seen it all, gasped in pure shock. My god, that's tribute-grade imperial jade. That jade mine was tapped out decades ago. I've only ever seen jade bangles of that quality on the dowager. And that coral necklace. A single bead could buy 10 gold bars, and the madam has an entire set? Su Concubine's face went completely blank. Jiangling stared at the hoard of rare, priceless gems, her eyes swirling with confusion, shock, and pure spite. In her past life, she'd been by the first madam's side for years, yet had no idea such an ice-cold, dreary room held these kinds of riches. The first madam ignored the collective gasps, turning to wave me over. Come here and pick out whatever you like. I was dazed for a second, but once my brain caught up, I waved my hands in a panic. Oh no, these are way too precious. I can't accept them. You are my daughter. Everything I own is meant for you to inherit anyway. In an instant, every envious gaze in the room locked onto me. Jiangling glared at me, seething with resentment. Su Concubine looked as pale as a ghost, but she decided to make one last pathetic attempt. Madam, I know that since the young lady grew up by your side, she's treated like the true legitimate daughter, and my Linger just can't compare. If you want to coddle her, no one dares to object, but in a prestigious house like the Jiang's, can the legitimate daughter just act so recklessly? The first madam looked at Su Concubine and suddenly smiled. When the first madam was cold and distant, Su Concubine was never afraid, but that calm, hollow smile now made Su Concubine tremble from head to toe. The first madam kept her eyes fixed on Su Concubine as she spoke to Nanny. Ma Mungo understood the assignment and dipped. Moments later, 2 guards dragged in a maid, with hair messier than my sleep schedule. Jiangling let out a frantic scream. Yuan Cui. Concubine Su pinched her hard, shutting that disaster up. Jiangling swallowed her scream, but she was shaking like a leaf. The maid Yuan Cui was splayed on the floor, covered in nasty wounds. The other ladies in the room looked away in disgust, but the madam stayed unbothered, giving zero fecks. Earlier today, Ma Mungo saw this maid running wild in the courtyard, deliberately making noise to bait the guards away from their posts, only to sneak into the inner chambers afterward. When she tried to leave, she looked shook and got caught by a servant passing by. I sensed something was off, so I took the liberty of interrogating her on behalf of the master. Here is the written confession. Yuan Cui has already signed and thumbprinted it. The master can see for himself. Madam waved her hand, and Ma Mungo handed the receipts to my father. She really planned for Concubine Su's inevitable denial. The madam spoke calmly, cutting off any escape routes, so no one could claim she forced a confession. During the interrogation, I invited the clan elders to observe as the head madam of the Jiang family. They can all bear witness that everything this maid said is the absolute truth. My father held the confession in one hand, while the other couldn't stop trembling. He never thought the madam was this ruthless. This woman had been quiet and reserved ever since she married into the family. He thought she was boring and didn't favor her, so she just stayed in her lane, chilling in the prayer room. But in this exact moment, he realized she was a mastermind who had everything under control behind his back. She was sharp as a tack and caught the snake in the grass ages ago. When the drama finally hit the fan, she had already finished the interrogation and was just waiting for them to make their move. Now that it's a full-blown scandal with the clan elders watching, even if he wanted to shield them, it was mission impossible. Yuan Cui started kowtowing like her life depended on it. Master, please spare me. It was all Miss Ling and Concubine Su's idea. They promised me 3 taels of silver if I got the job done. My father's face went through a spectrum of colors, glaring down at Concubine Su and Jiangling. Jiangling was already trembling, shrank so hard she looked like she might pass out. Concubine Su had been around the block a few times. She looked up at him with watery eyes, pulling out all the stops to play the victim. Master, I've been with you for over a decade. Please, you have to save me. I just have one question for the patriarch. Theft is a major crime, and per the family clay code, that's 30 lashes. So what exactly is the punishment for slander and framing someone? My father looked at Concubine Su, who was fake sobbing like she was about to pass out, then turned to the madam with a desperate, pathetic look. He mumbled that while they were definitely wrong, it wasn't technically slander. Wow, even the servants were side-eyeing that take. When it was me, he was ready to invoke family law before the theft was even proven. But when Concubine Su and Jiangling are caught in 4K framing me with hard receipts, he wants to sweep it under the rug. Everyone was triggered. Only the madam remained unbothered, cool as a cucumber. So that's what you think, my lord. Before my father could even react, she turned around and walked out, leaning on Nanny Wu. I thought the madam was still holding out hope that he'd actually serve justice in this house. But clearly, he's too busy with his official business and has totally lost the plot. He can't handle household affairs to save his life. Fine then, let's get the authorities involved. My father went pale, looking like he'd seen a ghost, and scrambled to block her path. The servants tried to jump her, but the madam just raised an eyebrow and boom, a dozen elite guards stepped in to protect her. They're the old guard from the general's estate. They only take orders from the madam, not him. Those weak household servants took one look at these literal tanks of guards, and were shook, backing off immediately. Watching the madam about to storm out, my father finally cracked. He covered his face and let out a pathetic soul-crushing groan. "Someone! Drag concubine Sue and that brat away and give them a beating they won't forget." It was a breezy day, and I sat in the courtyard with the madam, peeling water chestnuts. From a distance the shrill, dramatic shrieks of concubine Sue and Zhang Ling echoed through the air. The madam wiped her hands and said, "You're probably judging me right now, thinking I have the power, but choose not to fight." "Living so low-key all these years," I said, placing a peeled chestnut onto the white porcelain plate. "Madam doesn't fight, because father isn't worth the energy, but if you actually love someone, you should fight for them at least once." The madam's hand suddenly froze. After a long beat I heard her sigh. "So, you knew?" "Yes, I've known for a long time. All these years, whenever I followed the madam to the temple outside the city, we'd always run into a certain monk. He wore simple gray robes, but his brows and eyes were straight-up main character material. Everyone calls him Master Gu Chen. Word on the street is that Master Gu Chen used to be the capital's most elite young general. Back in the day, he was out here serving looks in white robes, living his best life. He and the madam were childhood sweethearts. That precious sword was the token of love he gave her all those years ago. Wait for me to return, and I will marry you." But that expeditionary force of 100,000 was buried in the western regions, and the young general never made it home. The legal mother wanted to end it all and follow him, but she couldn't bring herself to do it. She remarried, but her heart was already burnt to ash. 10 years later, the young general returned. He crawled his way back from the depths of the Shura hell, using his last bit of strength just to see the girl he loved one more time. But the girl from back then was already someone else's wife. So the young general didn't bother her, choosing instead to shave his head and become a monk at a temple on the outskirts of the city, taking the Dharma name Master Gu Chen. All of this is just hearsay, though. I was at the temple and saw the legal mother and Master Gu Chen meet in person. They exchanged a distant bow, looking exactly like two total strangers. If you hadn't heard those rumors, you'd never guess they even knew each other. The only time it changed was when the legal mother got sick, a fever that wouldn't break, no matter how much medicine they poured down her throat. Father was with concubine Sue, and the servants sent to fetch him were blocked by her people every single time. Nurse Wu, drenched in sweat, grabbed the madam's hand and begged, "Can we just let him come? Just let him come." Standing there holding the medicine bowl, I immediately understood who she meant and shoved the bowl at Nurse Wu. I grabbed the fastest horse and galloped into the night, racing straight for the temple outside the city. Master Gu Chen arrived. But I didn't enter the madam's room, instead spending the whole night striking the wooden fish in the next-door prayer hall. Listening to the rhythm of the wooden fish, the legal mother slowly recovered, separated only by a single wall. She knew he was right there beside her. No need for a face-to-face, the same moonlight shone on them both. Under the bright moonlight, I held the madam's hand, realizing that some things you think are too late aren't actually finished yet. She stared off into the distance, her expression deep in thought. Concubine Sue and Zhang Ling were finally released after being grounded for a month. My father is disgustingly biased. He claimed they were each given 30 lashes, but in reality, every strike was just for show. Concubine Sue and Zhang Ling were screaming for effect, but they were back to their old selves in less than 2 weeks. When she cornered me, Zhang Ling smirked. "So what if you have that old lady backing you? See that? In this house, the man's word is the only one that counts. Nobody in this manor can." The news reached the madam while she was standing by the window, pruning flowers in a vase. After hearing the report from Nanny Wu, she just raised an eyebrow and, without a word, snipped off the most vibrant flower in the bunch. She looked at the pruned stem and said, "Whatever, throw it all out. I don't even want this whole vase anymore." Nanny Wu led the maids to haul the flowers away, a faint, knowing smirk on her face. We all knew the madam hadn't gotten rid of Suniang for years, only because my father wasn't even worth the effort. But now, she's decided she doesn't even want my father anymore. The days that followed were peaceful, and the madam began teaching me much deeper, more ruthless lessons. She took me to visit her estates and shops so I could see with my own eyes how she managed such a massive fortune. And while checking the ledgers, I was shook to discover the legal owner of all these lands and shops was the madam herself, having absolutely nothing to do with the Jiang household. My mind was completely blown. Because in our dynasty, a woman's assets before marriage belong to her father or brothers. After marriage, even if you're the headmistress, all income has to be handed over to the family's common treasury. A woman's only private assets are usually just her dowry. Yet, over the last decade, The madam had flipped her original dowry into a massive empire, managing it into the powerhouse it is today. My face went pale, and the madam glanced at me with a scoff. Ugh, look at that dazed, clueless expression of yours. Did you really think all these years I did nothing but pray to Buddha and mind my own business? As a woman, between love and money, you have to at least secure one of them. Since I'm already over the love part, if I didn't stack my money, wouldn't I be a total loser? I nodded frantically, realizing the madam seemed to have a whole new lease on life. While I was busy learning her get-rich secrets, Zhang Ling wasn't exactly sitting around either. Guests from the peach garden were constantly flooding Su Niang's courtyard, and the sound of music never stopped. I knew Jiang Ling was perfecting the legendary Yao dance. She had become stunning, her years of training making her movements impossibly graceful. When we attended gatherings for the capital's nobles, the young lords fought to shower her with praise, crowning her the ultimate beauty of the city. They had once been impressed by my swordsmanship, but they quickly realized my personality was too rigid, and I refused to put on a show for their entertainment. Zhang Ling was different. She had all these pick-me talents, singing, playing the pipa, and dancing every seductive style imaginable. The young lord swooned. Miss Ling is truly a rare gem of both talent and beauty. Haha, I wonder which lucky guy will get to hide such a golden beauty in his mansion. Coming from the same Jiang family, that eldest miss is such a bore, and honestly she has absolutely no talents. It's a waste she was raised by the madam. She doesn't even hold a candle to the second young miss. Big sister, do I have any talents? She's really good at clicking an abacus. Maybe she's destined to be an accountant's assistant? Ha 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 ha. With that, she and her little entourage of socialite brats burst into laughter. Knowing the capital's high society gathering was coming up, Zhang Ling was already counting her victory. In my past life, while I was stuck in the shrine, transcribing scriptures, you were the star of every gala, and the little marquise fell for you at first sight. But sis, in this regression, I'm the only one who knows the Lu Yu Yao dance. What are you gonna use to compete with me now? I didn't even get mad, just kept my head down and played with my abacus. Little sister, for the sake of our bond, take this as my final advice. Don't perform the luau dance, and oh look, she's already rattled. Zhang Ling tossed her head and strutted away, feeling herself. Behind her, I just gave a quiet shrug. I warned her, so if it all goes south, that's on her. At the high society gathering, the young lords and ladies were seated on both sides. The little Marquis, Lucian of the Yongping Manor, sat right in the center of the crowd. He was rocking a black robe, looking so devastatingly handsome that it was impossible to look away. Though he radiated an intensity that screamed, "Don't mess with me." The people terrified of him called him the Asura King, while those obsessed would die just for a single glance. And my dear sister Jiang Ling? She was clearly in the obsessed camp. Halfway through the gathering, as the music kicked in, Jiang Ling made her grand entrance into the pavilion, moving with calculated grace. Flicking her sleeves, showing off that waist. She was pure unadulterated pick-me energy. This was the secret weapon Su Niang taught her. She genuinely believed no man could resist this dance without losing his damn mind. At first, the lords watching definitely looked a little thirsty. But as the vibe wore off, the guys started exchanging these really awkward looks. Their expressions went from wait, what to is this a joke? And finally, pure panic. Zhang Ling was completely oblivious, still feeling like the main character. When the dance ended, she did a little bow, expecting a standing ovation. This performance was supposed to be the legendary Lu Yao dance. She expected thunderous applause, but the room was dead silent. Then, the First Lord stood up. Sorry, I just remembered an urgent errand. I'm heading out with my brother. Immediately, others followed suit, and soon, the rest of the guests were scrambling to leave. As if they were terrified of being the last ones stuck there, practically tripping over themselves to ditch the party. Zhang Ling stood there totally shook, with zero clue why her plan crashed and burned. Among the crowd, Lu Zhen was the very last one to leave. He sat in silence for a long beat, before standing up and walking straight toward Zhang Ling. The lord, usually colder than an iced latte, had a softness in his eyes that made Zhang Ling's heart skip a beat. It was the young Marquis, the Marquise of Yongping. Yet, Lu Zhen just swerved past her, walking straight toward where I was standing. Have we met before? Lu Zhen didn't remember his past life, but the vibe was giving major déjà vu. Still, that tiny spark of familiarity was enough to make Zhang Ling lose her mind. She was particularly spiraling because the Lu Yao dance didn't hit like she thought it would. As soon as I stepped into the Jiang Manor, she grabbed me. Did you pull some shady move behind my back? Were you secretly practicing the Lu Yao dance this whole time? Did you already perform it for him, didn't you? She tried to jump me, but suddenly the door got kicked open, and my father stormed in with a mob of guards. He pointed a shaking finger at Zhang Ling, absolutely livid. Guards! Drag her away. Zhang Ling was pinned down by the servants, thrashing and sobbing. Father, what did I even do wrong? My father had been coddling Zhang Ling for over a decade. This was the first time she had ever seen him looking this terrifying. His beard was trembling with rage and pure panic, his eyes looking completely unhinged. You have the audacity to ask? Do you even know what you danced at the Yaji gathering? The Lu Yao dance, father. The very dance she had been obsessing over for an entire lifetime. She thought mastering it would be her shortcut to a fairy tale romance. But she had no idea that when the previous dynasty collapsed, the founding emperor of our current era watched the dancers in a drunken stupor and cursed them for ignoring the fall of the nation. Across the river, the song Ho Ting Hua was playing, and the dancers were performing the Lu Yao. Ever since that night, the dance was branded as soft, seductive, and downright scandalous. It was labeled as a cursed performance that leads to the downfall of nations and ruins the masses. Sure, girls in the brothels still performed it in secret. It was only just a drunken rant from an emperor after all. The imperial court never actually issued a formal ban. But Zhang Ling was the daughter of an official, and her actions didn't just represent emperor. They dragged the reputation and the Jiang family's daughter was supposed to be playing the zither and reciting poetry at the gala, but instead, she straight up performed the seductive Lu Yao dance. If it were any other time, fine, but with the nation currently in chaos and war brewing on all fronts, even as much as my father spoiled her, he finally hit his breaking point. Zhang Ling was locked in the family shrine for 7 days and 7 nights. When I went to see her, she looked absolutely wrecked. Those autumn water eyes that used to sparkle were now sunken, leaving her looking like a total skeleton. She didn't notice me at first, just kept muttering to the guards, "Go tell father he's wronging me." Concubine Su taught me this dance. If there was something wrong with it, how would she not know? Concubine Su probably really didn't know. She started out as a common dancer hiding from the law, using her looks and sucking up to the right people to get the patriarch to bring her home. But at the end of the day, she was just a concubine who couldn't even leave the gate. A concubine's vision is limited. Or maybe she did know, but she was desperate enough to gamble everything. Over the years, she's been using the Zhang family name for some shady side hustles, and is now drowning in debt. She knew if the patriarch found out, he'd serve her some serious karma, so she needed to pimp her daughter out to a wealthy family to secure her own safety net. Zhang Ling stared at me for a long time, then shook her head. "No, this isn't right, something's wrong. In our previous life you clearly danced this, and that's how you got Lu Zhen's love, right? So, dear sister, have you ever considered that Lu Zhen loved me for reasons other than that dance? In my past life, I didn't want to dance the Lu Yao. Even though I grew up under concubine Su, I spent every chance I got at the academy studying. I knew everything there was to know about the Lu Yao dance, and I knew that dancing it wouldn't just make me the laughingstock of the capital. It would bring disaster upon our entire house. But concubine Su forced me. She grabbed my hand and said, "Your father has taken yet another new concubine. Haha, it looks like there won't be any room left for us in this Zhang house soon. Trust me, just dance this in front of those young nobles, and someone is bound to want to marry you. Wife, concubine, it doesn't matter. Basically, as long as you're still young enough to dance, we've got another 10 years of living the good life." I still refused. So concubine Su tied up my personal maids and threatened their lives. "You won't dance? Then life or death doesn't matter. I might as well beat your little maids to death and send them ahead to serve you in the afterlife." I made her release the maids, and then I went and danced the Lu Yao at the gala. When I performed it, Lu Zhen was already disgusted by me. He looked down on me as some girl who'd debase herself just to please a man. It wasn't until he realized that after I finished the dance, I didn't utter a single word to any of the gentlemen present. I quietly slipped away to the backyard all by myself. Lu Zhen chased after me and found me writing poetry on the wall, not because I wanted to escape reality, but because of the debt of our past lives. After finishing that final masterpiece, I hung up a white silk rope, ready to end this hopeless existence. That was the moment Lu Zhen realized the pain and torment hidden behind that Lu Yao dance. He saved me and shut down the annoying nobles who were present that day, using the power of the Yongping Marquis estate to keep their mouths shut. I performed the Lu Yao dance for him, and as a thank you, I gifted him a sword tassel I made with my own hands. He returned the favor with a set of fine scholar's treasures. Later, he used that very sword to crush the enemy on the battlefield. From the rear, I used those treasures to write down my endless longing for him. Finally, Lu Zhen returned victorious from the war. He arrived with the 3 letters and 6 rights to carry me home as his bride. On the wedding invitation, he wrote a vow to love me until the end of time. But we never actually made it to that forever. In my past life, when Lu Zhen returned from the war, he only found my charred remains after the fire. That day, the undefeated Yongping Marquis walked out of the Jia state looking like a broken stray dog. Everyone knew his fiancée had perished. Matchmakers flocked to his estate, trying to get him to move on and shoving new women in his face. Lu Zhen chased them all away and headed alone to a temple in the outskirts. The temple had 3,000 steps. He kowtowed at every single one, climbing up to light an eternal lamp for me. Flowers bloom and wither by fate's command, and everything that comes must eventually leave. If the mountain flowers adorn your hair, how could the bamboo leaves ever escape? Lu Zhen suddenly broke down, kowtowing before the temple deities, begging them over and over again to save me, and to give me a chance at a do-over. He kowtowed until his forehead was covered in blood. Finally, a figure in gray robes stopped before him, a monk who looked down at him with eyes full of pity. The greatest suffering in this world is longing. Very well, I shall grant your wish. I didn't know any of this until Master Guchen told me. That night he beat the wooden gong all night long for my stepmother. As he left the Jiang estate, he looked at me and smiled. Young lady, my suffering was life's separation. But you have prayed for your own regression. While his suffering was the agony of death. Thankfully, you two have been given a second chance. So please, cherish this connection. Under the moonlight, Master Guchen bowed his hands to me. He endured the pain of eternal separation and the agony of unrequited love, yet still prayed that every couple in the world could find their happy ending. Looking at Jiang Ling's dead-eyed expression right now, do you finally get it, little sister? That flashy dancing skill you're so proud of? It's only good for fleeting temporary favor. And love, true love, has never been that shallow. It requires two hearts to actually vibrate on the same frequency. The prince and I might have crossed paths because of the Liu Yao dance, but his love for me had absolutely nothing to do with it. The ending was written the moment we met. Nothing was ever going to change that. He doesn't love you because he's complicated. He doesn't love you simply because you aren't me. Either way, I really should thank you. If it weren't for you, I never would have been adopted by the first madam, and I wouldn't have learned the secret history of Master Chen. So for my peace and happiness in this lifetime, I truly owe you a debt of gratitude for stepping aside. Jiang Ling finally lost her mind. She escaped from the ancestral hall in the dead of night, snuck into concubine Su's quarters, and started strangling her. I always thought she hated me the most throughout both our lifetimes. But I finally realized the person she actually loathed was concubine Su. In our previous life, when the Ho mansion came to propose, it was concubine Su who ran to the first madam's courtyard to brag and stir up drama. She boasted that she was favored more than the madam, and that her daughter was far superior to the madam's own child. She claimed that the dance she taught her, the Liu Yao dance, made the young marquis fall for her at first sight. She bragged that whoever mastered that dance could hold the hearts of every man in the realm. Jiang Ling, eavesdropping on the first madam's side, took that lie to heart and became completely obsessed. She endured years of concubine Su's manipulation and straight-up abuse just to master that dance. Little did she know, it was all just a massive delusional pipe dream. Jiang Ling gripped concubine Su's neck, screaming until her voice was raw. Concubine Su fought back just as viciously, screaming insults right back at her. You useless brat, you're just pathetic, because you couldn't lock down a man, and now you're blaming me? If I had adopted the other girl that year, she would have married into an elite house ages ago, and I'd be living my best life. They struggled and shoved, knocking over a candle stand, and in a flash, the flames engulfed the room. That once luxurious room, dripping with gold and jade, was reduced to ashes, and both concubine Su and Jiang Ling perished inside. Just a few months later, father had the room renovated into something even more gorgeous. A new concubine moved in to take their place. Word is, this new girl is a top-tier singer, bragging to everyone, don't blame the master for favoring me so much. If anyone can sing the Peony Pavilion, as well as I do, the mess happening at the Jiang household literally doesn't involve me anymore. A year later, I officially tied the knot with Lu Zhen. On my wedding day, I wore my red robes and bowed to the elders, with the madam sitting high above. Usually, she'd be expected to spout some polite nonsense about serving my husband and being a dutiful daughter-in-law. But the madam didn't say a word of that. She stayed silent for a long moment, then finally whispered, Weir, you must be happy, that's the one thing I couldn't get in the first half of my life. After seeing me off, the madam placed a divorce petition she'd prepared long ago right in front of the patriarch. My father was shook, and after the initial shock wore off, he went full toxic. Are you out of your mind? Your family will never let you divorce. Actually, they will, because I've already cut ties with the Wen clan. My father's eyes went wide. He couldn't wrap his head around how a woman who leaves her husband and cuts off her own kin could possibly survive in this world. But then, a realization hit him, and he pointed a trembling finger at the madam. I get it now. You think because your daughter snagged a spot in the Yongping Marcus boss household, you finally have a backup plan, don't you? I don't need a backup, I have my own wealth. The businesses I've managed over the years are enough to keep me living in luxury for 8 lifetimes. Your Zhang clan plus my Wen clan combined aren't even as rich as I am. With that, the madame unsheathed the sword she'd kept in the room for nearly 20 years. The cold, sharp glint instantly lit up the entire chamber. Patriarch, instead of worrying about me, you should worry about yourself. The madame finally walked out of the Jiang household, the place she'd been stuck in for over a decade. She cleaned out her assets completely. She didn't take a single thing that belonged to the Jiangs. But as for the shops and properties she personally built up, there was no way in hell the Jiang household was getting even a cent. My father was so triggered he actually fell ill and was bedridden. By the time he recovered, he realized the estate had gone to ruins and was a total disaster. The head wife was gone, and the remaining concubines were just a bunch of gold diggers who knew how to spend, not save. Ask them to scheme for favor and they're experts, but ask them to look at a ledger and they're totally clueless. My father had no choice but to try and find a new wife, but in Jingcheng, every decent family already knew his legendary reputation for favoring concubines and destroying his own wife. Honestly, no one wants to marry their daughter off just to be humiliated like this. My father was out of options, so he crawled back to the madam once again. My lady, I was wrong back then. I regret everything. I don't want a divorce anymore. Let's just wipe the slate clean. Just come home with me. From now on you'll still be the mistress of the Jiang estate, and no one will ever dare to step out of line against you again. The madam sipped her tea for a beat before tossing the dregs at my father's feet. The feng shui in this room has been trash lately. Why do pests keep crawling in here? Nanny Wu, when you have a second, call an exorcist to cleanse the place. My father's face went from pale to red, but he was too shook to pop off, so Nanny Wu just ushered him out. Once he left, the madame looked toward the screen and said, "Come on out." I stepped out, grinning like an idiot. She shot me a glare. You're getting more lawless by the day. He is your biological father after all. You couldn't even be bothered to show your face. Just hiding there to watch him make a fool of himself. Only those who actually love me are my real family. This is the same father who tried to beat me to death over a hairpin. Whoever wants him can keep him. So whenever it was time to visit my parents, I'd just hit up the madame and never set foot in the Jiang estate. The madam still lived in that super modest room. Just an incense burner and a Buddha statue, that's it. But now that I have better taste, I know what's what. I know that the agarwood in that burner is worth way more than gold. She's always been a low-key wealthy queen. She just couldn't be bothered to flex. Most people are just blind, mistaking a rare gem for a piece of rotten wood. The madam washed her hands and lit the incense before the Buddha, still looking completely unbothered. So spill the tea on how things are going at the estate. I, the lady of the house, suddenly felt like a student being grilled by a professor, not daring to slip up even for a second. Ever since I took over the household, every storefront, property, and asset has been audited and accounted for. The servants are finally in line, and I've served karma to all the backstabbing snakes among them. Plus I got some insider intel. The emperor is about to open trade routes to the western regions. So I use my own dowry to stock up on war horses, tea leaves, silk, and porcelain. I'm planning to scout the main trade routes to pick the best spots for new outposts. None of this profit is going into the estate's communal funds. This is strictly my own girl boss capital. I felt like I really delivered a solid report card. My stepmother just sighed and looked at me. Girl, who's asking about business? I already taught you that, and I know you've got it down. What I'm stressed about is the stuff I haven't taught you yet. I bowed my head, my face heating up a little. He treats me so well. Every day by his side is just living the dream. My stepmother finally cracked a satisfied smile. She once told me that as women, we at least need to secure either the bag or the man. Now I'm the one telling her, why not be a little greedy? Why not go for both and have it all? She gazed out the window at a celadon vase where a single red plum blossom was in full bloom. Outside, the night deepened, and a monk in gray robes appeared, carrying a hoe and fresh plum blossoms. Under the moonlight, he bowed deeply, and she bowed right back. Through the blooming red plum branches by the window, I looked off into the distance, catching a glimpse of the spirited youth from all those years ago. Wait for me to return victorious, and I will marry A Heng. Fine, then don't keep me waiting too long. Actually, waiting a little longer isn't so bad. No matter how the world turns, true love always finds its way back. From here on, I'll look at the mountains without regret, and walk the waters,